Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel Daysi DIY. Today I'm sharing with you guys an easy home decor. I hope you enjoy. If you do, please don't forget to give me a big thumbs up. Thank you so much. For the first project, we're going to be using one wood truck that I got from Dollar Tree, and here's the item number just in case if you guys need it. And to paint it, I'm going to be using the Restore Check paint on color grade. I did one coat and I just let it dry. Also, I decided to cover the holes where the hanger was, and for that I'm using the lightweight spackling that I got from Dollar Tree. I just used a little bit and I just let it dry. I'm going to distress it a little bit on the top, and for that I'm using the Restore Check paint on color white. I just use a little bit of paint and I just distress it the way that I want it. The next thing, we're going to be using a small piece of cardboard, and I just bend it a little bit so we can mark the lines a little bit. So I decided to paint it a little bit, and for that I used the Restore Check paint on color white. I just used a little bit of paint, and the other paint that I decided to use, it was the Restore Check paint on color gray. I just went over a few parts so it can look a little bit distressed. Also, I'm going to be reusing this picture frame that I had on hand, and I decided to paint it, and I just used the Restore Check paint on color white. I did one coat and I just let it dry. The next thing, we're going to be using this beautiful free printable that I found on Google, and I'm just gonna cut a few pieces. So once we're done, we're gonna be using a little bit of Mod Podge to put this beautiful image on the truck. First, I did one coat on the truck and also one coat on the image, and once I was done, I just placed my image and I just went over again with another coat of Mod Podge so we can seal everything, and I just let it dry. I'm going to be using the Waverly anti-wax to distress it a little bit the truck, and I just went over especially on the edges of the truck. The next thing, I decided to paint the tires, and for that I'm using the Craft White chalkboard paint on color ink. I just went over all around and especially the edges, and I just did one coat and I just let it dry. Also, I did the same step on the other tire. So once I was completely done, I went over again with the anti-wax because I didn't like it how it looks, and I just want to distress it a little bit, especially just in the edges of this part of the truck. I'm going to mark the lines with my pencil, and I just marked the lines twice. And once I was done marking the lines, I just used my finger to distress it a little bit. Also, I decided to use the Waverly anti-wax, and I just marked the lines a little bit more so they can look a little bit distressed, and I just used a little bit of paint. So once the picture frame is completely dry, I just went over with a small piece of sandpaper to distress it a little bit because I just want the color that it has under to show a little bit. And also, I decided to use the Waverly anti-wax to distress it a little bit. I just used a little bit of paint and it turned out really beautiful once we put that paint. So once it was done, I just put everything back together. Also, we're just going to be using a little bit of hot glue to put this beautiful truck on the top. If you guys want a strong hold, I would recommend you guys to use wood glue. The next thing, we're going to be using this beautiful fall grass that I found on Dollar Tree, and I just cut a few pieces. If you guys want, you guys can just place it right here and use a little bit of hot glue to glue it. But I decided to use a small piece of zip tie, and I just tie it very well. And also, I just create this beautiful messy bow to put it right here in the top. You guys can put it right here in the middle or in the side. I decided to put it right here in the side, and I just use a little bit of hot glue to glue everything. And this is how it looks our project once we're done. It turned out really gorgeous. I love it. All the colors, they blend all together. But please let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about our first project? For the next project, we're going to be using 9 Jenga blocks that I got from Dollar Tree, and to glue all these pieces together, I'm just using a little bit of hot glue, but if you guys want a strong hold, I would recommend you guys to use wood glue. Also, I decided to use these brown pieces. If you guys don't have this brown one, you guys can just use the plain ones. So we're gonna be trying to create a small pumpkin, and I'm just gonna glue it this way. And once we glue it all these pieces together, we're just gonna glue the remaining pieces. So once we're done, to paint it, I'm using the Restylane chalk paint on color white. I did one coat and I just let it dry. So you guys can see I didn't cover it all the way because I want the color brown to show a little bit. So I just did one coat and I just let it dry. So once it's completely dry, I went over with the Waverly chalk paint on color moss to distress it a little bit. I just used a little bit of paint to distress it. We're going to be using another Jenga block to put the stem on the middle, and I just use a little bit of hot glue to glue it. Also, we're going to be creating a small bow to put it in the middle, and I just use this small raffia bow and also this burlap ribbon and a piece of that lace ribbon. So with a small piece of jute twine, I just tied these two pieces together, and with the remaining piece, I just use my scissors to cut it. So once we're done, I just use a little bit of hot glue to glue it. Also, I decided to use a few pieces of this greenery to put it right here on the other side because I want the pumpkin to be two sides, and also to distress it a little bit on the edges, I just use a small piece of sandpaper and I just distress it the way that I want it. The other thing that I did, I just used another small piece of ribbon and I just placed it on the bottom so it can has this beautiful bow on the other side. And also I just used one button to put it on the middle of the bow because it was missing something. So this is how it looks at project once we're done. It turned out really adorable, this pumpkin. I love it, but please let me know what you guys think. For the next project, we're going to be using this beautiful pumpkin decor piece that I got from Dollar Tree. To paint it, I'm using the Restylane chalk paint on color white. I just went over all the edges. I just used a little bit of paint. So once I was done, I just went over again with the same paint to distress it a little bit more. And also, I decided to remove all the embellishment that I had the pumpkin because I just want to paint it also the stem from the top. And to have a finished better look, I decided to paint the edges and I just let it dry. So the next thing, we're going to create this beautiful bow, and I just use these ribbons that I got from Dollar Tree and I just cut a few pieces, and once I was done, I just placed the pieces of the ribbon this way and I just tie everything very well with a small piece of jute twine, and I just tie it very well twice. And once I was done with the remaining piece of the jute twine, I just used my scissors to cut it. Also, I'm going to be using the same pieces of the raffia bow, and I just create this beautiful bow to put it right here in the middle. And it was a little bit bigger once I placed that small bow of raffia, so I just used my scissors to cut it at the side that I need it. So I just use a little bit of hot glue to glue it. Also, I'm going to be using this Waverly chalk paint on color mask to paint the leaf. I just did one coat and I just let it dry. So once we're done, I decided to put a small piece of the craft stick on the bottom so we can give this 3D effect to the leaf. And I just used a little bit of hot glue to glue everything. I decided to cover the holes where the hanger was so it can has a finished look, this beautiful pumpkin. I just want to have another option for this beautiful sign. So what I did, I used the Waverly chalk paint on color mask. I just used a little bit of paint to paint it. I didn't cover it all the way because I want the letters to show a little bit, so I just went a little bit heavy on the edges of the pumpkin, but on the top of the letters I just used a little bit of paint. So once it's completely dry, I went over the letters with a small piece of sandpaper so we can remove the paint. It removed a little bit of the glitter that it had this beautiful sign, but it didn't matter because it turned out really beautiful. And once it was done, I just sanded a little bit the edges of the pumpkin, and I just did the same step. I reused the same beautiful leaf with the same bow, and this is how it looks our project once we're done. It turned out really beautiful. I love the color, but please let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about the second version of the pumpkin? For the next project, we're going to be using this wood piece that I found on the toy section, and I had it on hand for a really long time. So the first thing, I removed that image, and once I was done, I decided to paint it, and for that, I used the Restore chalk paint on color white. I did one coat and I just let it dry. Also, I decided to paint the edges. To distress it a little bit more, I just went over with the Restore chalk paint on color gray. I just used a little bit of paint and I just let it dry. The next thing, we're going to be using these beautiful napkins that I found on Dollar Tree, and I just cut a small piece. So we're going to remove this white part from the back, and we're going to just leave that print. And once it was done, I just used a small brush, and it's a little bit wet so we can rip the edges of the napkin. I decided to use this technique so it can give this effect on the edges of the napkin. If you guys want, you guys can just use a pair of scissors and you guys gonna be good to go. So once I was done, I just used a little bit of Mod Podge and I just did one coat and I just placed my image. So my brush still has a little bit of Mod Podge. I just went over to smooth a little bit the image. So once I was done, I did another coat on Mod Podge on the top so we can seal the image, and I just let it dry. Also, with my drill, I just did the hole in the middle so we can hang this beautiful piece. So to distress it a little bit on the edges, I just used the Waverly anti-wax and I just used a little bit of paint and I just distress it at the way that I want it. I just want to create another project on the other side. So to paint it, I used the Restylane chalk paint on color grade. I did one coat and I just let it dry. And once it was completely dry, to distress it a little bit, I just used the Restylane chalk paint on color white. Also, I'm going to be using this beautiful free printable that I found on Google, and I'm just going to cut this beautiful piece. And my daughter, she just want to show you this part that we're not going to be using that part from the image. So once we're done, we're going to do one coat of Mod Podge and I'm just going to place my image. I decide to do another coat of Mod Podge on the top so we can seal the image. And I just did the same step. I just used the Waverly anti-wax to distress the edges a little bit. I just use a little bit of paint to go over of the image because when I print this beautiful image, my printer ran out of ink and I didn't like it, the color that it had. So I just painted and I just went over with the same Waverly anti-wax and I just distressed it a little bit. Also, I just used this rub-on transfer and I just place it right here and I just use my nail to rub on the letter and I just peeled this plastic part from the top. Also, I'm going to be using this fall grass that I got from Dollar Tree and I just cut a few pieces and I just used a little bit of hot glue to glue it. So once I'm done, I'm going to be using a piece of jute twine and I'm just going to be wrapping it on the handle a few times, and with the remaining piece, I just use a little bit of hot glue to glue it. Also, I just used another piece of jute twine to put it right here in the handle. And I did the same step. I just used a little bit of hot glue to glue the jute twine to cover this part all over. And I just wrap it a few times, and with the remaining piece I just use my scissors to cut it and I just put a little bit of glue to hold the remaining piece of the jute twine. And this is how it will look if you guys decide just to leave it this way, but I decided to create these beautiful messy bows to put it right here in the middle, and I just use my lighter to just burn a little bit of the end of the jute twine so it won't frame our jute twine. So I just use a little bit of hot glue to glue it, and I did the same step on the other side. I just create another beautiful bow, and this is how it looks our project once we're done. It turned out really adorable, this two-side project, but please let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about this project? For the next project, we're going to be using another wood sign that I got from Dollar Tree, and here's the item number just in case if you guys need it. So the first thing, I'm going to remove the image. If you guys want, you guys can just use the back of the sign to do this project. So to paint it, I'm using the Restylane chalk paint on color white. I did one coat and I just let it dry. And to distress it a little bit more, I just went over with the Waverly chalk paint on color moss. I just used a little bit of paint to distress it. So once it's completely dry, I just went over with the Restylane chalk paint on color white so we can distress it a little bit more. I know we used a few paints, but it turned out really beautiful once you're done distressing the sign. So once it's completely dry, I decide to create lines, and for that my sign I measured 20 inches. So every inch I just mark my lines, and once I was done, I just start connecting all my lines, and I just use my pencil to mark the lines twice so they can be a little bit dark. And once I was done, I just use my finger to distress all the lines. I'm going to use two painter sticks that I got from Amazon, and I'm just gonna cut it at the side that we need it. So what I did, I just placed my sign on the top, and with my pencil I just mark it at the side that we need it, and with my saw I just cut it. So the next thing, I just use a piece of sandpaper to sand the edges of the painter stick. And to paint it, I used the Waverly chalk paint on color must. I did one coat and I just let it dry. I will be using this beautiful free printable that our talented Heidi Sonboul shared with us on her channel. If you have not seen this video, I will leave in my description of the video the link and also her channels. Thank you very much, Heidi, for sharing this beautiful free printable. So what I did, I just marked it at the side that I needed for my sign. It was a little bit bigger, so I just used my scissors to cut it. So once I was done, I just used a little bit of Mod Podge to put first on the back of the image, and once I was done, I did another coat of Mod Podge on the top, and I just placed my image. So with the same brush, it still has a little bit of Mod Podge. I just went over so we can smooth a little bit the wrinkles. I decided to do another coat of Mod Podge on the image so we can seal everything. The next thing, we're just going to put the two painter sticks in the top, and to glue it, I'm going to do a combination of wood glue and hot glue for a strong hold. So once I'm done, I'm going to do the same step with the other painter stick on the top. I'm going to be using this eucalyptus that I found on Dollar Tree, and I just grabbed a few pieces and I just used a small piece of zip tie to tie it very well. If you guys want, you guys can put it right here on the top or in the bottom. I just used a little bit of hot glue to glue it. So once I was done, I create another beautiful bow, and I just use the ribbons from Dollar Tree, and I just use a little bit of hot glue to glue it. If you guys want, you guys can use the same piece of jute twine to hang this beautiful wall sign, but I decided to use this plant hanger, and I just got it at the side that I need it, and I just place it, and once I was done with my pliers, I just tied everything very well. And this is how it looks our project once we're done. It turned out really beautiful. I love all the colors, but please let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about our last project? So that was it for today's video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please don't forget to give me a big thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified every time that I upload a new video. And please don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you so much and have an amazing day.